Hello, how is everyone doing? Lily. She's very excited to be back this week. Um, this week we're going to be talking about your inner child. I kind of touched on it last week, and I had a few conversations this week about it randomly, so intuitively I knew that's what I should talk about this week. So I am just going to get right into that and go over ways that you know that your inner child needs something and that they are trying to let you learn how they were not cared for as a child. It's gonna kind of be in the third person. I like to call my inner child little Rachel, and sometimes when I'm speaking to someone, I call them, their little self. So it kind of distinguishes which version of them I'm talking about. So usually you can tell if your inner child is being triggered by the way you respond to people or the way people make you feel when they do something and you're like about to flip out. For instance, I get triggered a lot when when anyone, it doesn't matter who they are, how important they are to me or not, if they ignore me or like don't respond to me, I get very, very anxious and I get like really like angry about it. And like, I know that people are busy. Like, adult me knows these things. For instance, my best friend is notorious for doing this, and she's gonna laugh when she watches this because she does it, but she knows she's very aware that she does it, and she is always so apologetic, and I always appreciate that because a lot of people don't necessarily care that much to apologize, like, hey, I have been very absent, like, I'm very sorry for that. But like, she obviously understands and knows me and knows that like I grew up very abandoned by my parents and such, so that's mainly why it triggers me. It triggers my inner child, and she just cannot stand being ignored by people, like what she perceives being ignored by someone. So I oftentimes will have a conversation with someone if I feel like they're doing it on purpose or if I am just know that I'm being silly over it. And typically I have someone else in my life who does this, and I know other people that they do the same thing to, so I know that it's not me personally. It's just that person's disability to always be attentive to their phone, even though they always have their phone in their hand. I do it sometimes now too, where I will look at a message and then I get distracted and I completely forget to respond, and then later on I'm like, oh, this must be what those people do when they're not ignoring me, when they're just busy and get distracted. And I kind of laugh about it now a little bit. I mean, it still bothers me at times when I'm feeling particularly sensitive, but for the most part I just laugh at myself like, you're silly. And most of the time, whatever I am reaching out to this person about isn't even necessarily that important. So that's why I'm like, why do I ever get really upset about this? And once I started learning about my inner child, I, kind of realized, oh, that's why. That's why I get upset when people do this. So you're not, crazy if something bothers you. There's usually a really deep meaning to why something bothers you, and it's honestly worth a second look. So if you kind of notice that something really, really bothers you, then, take a look at it. See if you can find a root cause from your childhood. Like, you can kind of meditate on it and go back to a time where you felt like this instance happened as a child. And honestly, you're gonna be like, oh, that's crazy. That's all I have to do. All you really have to do is have like a meditative talk with your inner child. I used to do hypnosis, and when I would be hypnotized, we would also do this kind of like self-soothing to let my inner child know that, you're an adult now and it's fine, and, you don't need to feel this way and you're safe. And that's basically all it boils down to when you didn't have your needs met or something traumatic happened to you as a child. You go into, safety mechanisms and defense mechanisms to protect yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is honestly what you need to get by at the time. So don't try to fight it off, but, maybe try to analyze it a little bit and find out why you're so upset by things that shouldn't, like if you took yourself out of the equation and thought about whatever situation's upsetting you. Because sometimes I will notice it in my surroundings. The same exact scenario will happen to someone else and they don't act the same way, or whatever's upsetting them wouldn't particularly upset me. So I instantaneously know that if it's something that's really bothering that person, then more than likely, if it's not bothering everyone else, it's something that they have unresolved from their childhood or a post-traumatic event. And typically, as I was saying, if you just kind of like have a meditative talk with your inner child and kind of rewrite the script and let them know, I'm in charge now and I take very good care of us and I protect you and you don't need to do that for me anymore. And you don't need to, reject situations or let situations upset you that really aren't as detrimental as they seem now that I'm an adult. And it's kind of weird, per se, that you're speaking to yourself in the third person, but honestly, you do have multiple sides of yourself, and whether you choose to believe it or not, your little self inside of you is very much sometimes, driving the ship. So it's not unheard of to try to, speak to them as you would a child. If you are a parent now, speak to yourself how you would speak to your child if they were upset about something. And I promise you, it will shift and start to change, and you will start noticing, wow, these things aren't upsetting me as much anymore. And okay, now that I've given it the attention that it needs, I can move on from this. And that's basically been my lesson for like the last month or so. And it's really cool to like watch it come out in real time and to watch other people, kind of realizing their struggles and not knowing or understanding where it's coming from. And as soon as I bring up their inner child, they're like, oh, I know exactly what it is now. And then they can go and, do the work and heal it for themselves so that they can potentially move on and not let their surroundings and the people around them upset them as much. And hopefully, lead a happier lifestyle. But I didn't realize that a lot of this stuff was as detrimental as it is as an adult until I started working on my inner child. Something else that kind of stood out to me recently that my inner child kind of has been bringing out of me is a kind of like a compulsive nature to shop. And I sometimes do it when I'm really upset. It's kind of a soothing thing to me. And until I started doing like the meditations and, having conversations with my inner child, basically, I realized that sometimes I shop as a self-soothing mechanism. Basically, when I was a child, I was very poor, so I didn't have any money to buy anything. Like my mother she had 3 kids and she just didn't have a ton of money to buy us, everything that we wanted. She was on welfare and, barely scraped by. So as an adult, sometimes I overindulge, but adult me is like, oh my God, I don't have the money to spend. Whereas child me is like, YOLO, because I didn't get this as a child. Let's go buy everything in the store because you have a credit card you can swipe. So you kind of have to be in control as the adult and, tell yourself, all right, we're going to do this in moderation. Obviously, we can treat ourselves. We are deserving. I work very hard as an adult, but I can't do this every week, and I can't do this, as much as I would like, just because, I have responsibilities. I have bills to pay. So I try to get a control on the spending. And another thing recently I figured out, chocolate. My little Rachel loves chocolate. If I go in my pantry right now, I have a ton of chocolate just like stockpiled, and I'm like, why did I buy all this chocolate? And then I'm like, oh yeah, as a kid I loved chocolate. As an adult, I love gummy candies. Like, I am very much a gummy person. Like, I love gummy worms and Sour Patch Kids, like things like that. So when I go crazy on chocolate, I can usually tell that that's like my inner me needing something. Like, I need to be soothed in some way. So if you kind of look at your behaviors and things like that, you can start to pick up and see where your inner child is coming through and where they are needing some sort of love or attention or affection or something like that. And honestly, you don't have to go buy everything in the store or eat all the chocolate in the world or whatever your, guilty pleasure is. But, sometimes in moderation, it is healthy to have the things that bring you joy. So I do buy things that bring me joy, and I do experiences that bring me joy, but I'm now learning that if I'm going through something in life, I lost my grandmother over the summer, so I was having a lot of anxiety, and I was compulsively shopping, and I didn't understand why I was doing this, but it felt good. It was soothing to me. It was mindless. Like, I went there and it made me feel better. And it kind of like made sense after I looked at all of this that my grandmother loved to shop as a kid, and that's something we did together. And I very much so was heartbroken to lose her because she was kind of my normalcy growing up. Like, she was my parental figure that was kind of always in my life, even when my mother or my father wasn't. So I, was very sad to lose her. And during that time, the anxiety that I was feeling was caused by that, and my inner child basically was soothing herself by going to Bath and Body Works and buying everything she possibly could multiple days of the week, and just going to every sale that she could possibly find because Nana loved a sale. So it was fine for the week because I needed to just take care of myself, and that's what I was doing. And it wasn't to the detriment that, like, I'm gonna go, broke buying a couple candles or some lotions from Victoria's Secret. So it's justified for me. It helped me out, and it made me feel better in the time. And then eventually I did go and like process the feelings that I was actually having, and I gave attention to where it needed to be put, to move on from it so that it's not going to be something that continuously like gnaws at me deep down, because I do have a lot of child regressed things because I didn't know how to process emotions or feelings growing up. A lot of times when I was upset, my mother would kind of ignore me or like lock me in my room, and I was never shown healthy ways to express myself. So growing up, it was a little bit difficult in my adult years, and honestly until recently, to express myself in a healthy way instead of flipping out or just avoiding the person and never speaking to them again unless they asked me what was wrong. And I'm totally guilty of being immature at times, so just understanding why you act that way is the biggest struggle of it. And then as soon as you figure it out, you're able to move on from it and kind of learn better coping mechanisms and better strategies to handle conflict. And that is basically what I've been learning over the past year, is how to be in relationships in a healthy way and kind of rewrite what I was taught or not taught growing up from my parents. And I just am so thankful that I've started this journey, and I am very excited to kind of pass on everything that I learned to my audience here. And I really I want to help other people. Like, that's like my core element in life, I guess, is to help other people, and also to just spread my awareness and my knowledge, and also to show my little my little angel here that just loves chewing on her little chew bone. It's funny, she doesn't really chew on this thing unless I'm filming or doing yoga, and then she goes to town on it. But she has definitely helped me so much through everything that I have been going through, and I honestly I can't imagine life without her. I love her so much. She's my favorite. All right, everyone, I will see you next week, and I hope that these messages are helping you in some way, and if you need any further assistance, don't hesitate to reach out. Take care.